Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. The palmaris longus tendon is a part of the body that 14% of the world's population does not have, and there are even people who do not have it in one arm but do in the other. This does not affect hand movement, and it is believed that ancient humans used it to hold spears, but due to evolution, it is disappearing. The first cat video ever recorded was made in 1894. It shows two cats boxing and was filmed by Thomas Edison himself. Bottles shaped like animals made by prehistoric people have been found in Europe and are believed to have been used for babies in the same way they are used today. Before the 17th century, almost all carrots people consumed were purple, but over time, orange ones were favored, and today they are the majority. Between 1920 and 1930, a group of light bulb manufacturers formed that controlled the market and strictly prohibited companies from producing bulbs that lasted more than 1,000 hours. There are bulbs from before that period that still work today. The anatomy of lobsters is somewhat unusual compared to other animals. Their stomach is behind their head, their heart is in their back, and their nervous system is in their abdomen. There is a store in the United Kingdom that sells salt made directly from people's tears, or at least that is what the jars claim. And there are different types such as laughter, anger, sneezing, and cutting onions. The impact of the asteroid that wiped out all the dinosaurs was so strong that it could have sent rocks from Earth to Mars, as well as other points in the solar system such as Jupiter's moon Europa. That means that if we find life in those places, it could have originated on Earth. It is true that each alcoholic beverage can cause a different type of hangover. This is due to congeners, which are chemicals produced during fermentation. And while some drinks have fewer, such as vodka, others, like wine or whiskey, have more, which causes a stronger hangover. The Prometheus tree, located in Nevada, United States, was once considered the oldest tree in the world. It is between 4,700 and 5,000 years old. In Dubai, there are very strict laws regarding debt. That is why there are many extremely expensive sports cars abandoned by people who fall behind on payments and prefer to flee the emirate to another country to avoid being pursued. At the KQ Abudatsubo Aquarium in Japan, the place where the otters are kept has small holes where visitors can shake hands with these animals. Being in a social environment makes them happier. One of the Argentine ant colonies is so large that it spans many countries in Europe and Asia. An ant could even travel by airplane, get off in another country, and be welcomed into the same colony. The inspiration for the character of the doll Chucky in the 1988 movie Charles Lee Ray was the great success of the Cabbage Patch Kids dolls in the 1980s. Creator Don Mancini realized how marketing affected people and wanted to make a satire. There is a fully taxidermied whale in a museum in Sweden that used to be open to the public and people could have dinner inside, but that is no longer allowed. It is the only taxidermied blue whale in the world. On the coast of Iceland, there is a giant rock shaped like an elephant. It is a popular tourist site. Also in New Zealand, Italy, and the United States, there are famous rocks shaped like this animal. The first dinosaur fossils found during the 17th century were described in scientific texts as bones of a Roman war elephant or as bones of a giant human, like those described in the Bible. Later, they were identified as belonging to a megalosaurus. Mattel released a special edition Hot Wheels in 2010 that is Wonder Woman's invisible jet, except it is actually invisible since it contains nothing, only the airplane-shaped packaging. It started as a joke, but people requested it until they made it. Scientists realized that bacteria in the stomach directly influence nerve connections with the brain when they noticed that many people had their first experience with anxiety and depression after getting sick with stomach illness. Surimi, imitation crab meat, is actually made from ground fish, and the colored part is natural coloring. Compared to real crab meat, imitation surimi has less cholesterol. Pumbaa was the first Disney character to fart in a movie, in The Lion King in 1994. There are swimsuits that have UV protection technology, rated UPF 50, which means it blocks up to 98% of the sun's rays. Clovers have twice as many chromosomes as humans. Because of this, it is almost impossible to know whether four-leaf clovers are due to genetic traits or are caused by the environment where they grow. One of the monsters described in Japanese mythology is called Ashi Arai Yashiki and is a giant foot that, when it appears, demands that you wash and clean it. If you do not, it destroys your house. Birds that live in cities often use cigarette butts to build their nests because the nicotine they contain can act as a natural pesticide that keeps bacteria and predators away. If you could take a spoonful of matter from a neutron star, it would weigh more than 10 billion tons, which would be equivalent to the weight of a mountain on planet Earth. Long eggs are made in machines from normal cooked eggs and are used by the food industry because they have a more uniform concentration of egg white and yolk and can be cut into equal slices, unlike normal eggs. It is common for spiders to eat their own webs daily. This allows them to reuse the silk proteins to create more. Giant anteaters do not produce acid in their stomachs, unlike all other mammals. Instead, their food dissolves and is digested using the venom produced by the ants they eat. Spam emails receive one response for every 12.5 million messages sent. However, it seems to work well enough for scammers because the practice continues to exist. Farmers spent more than 300 years trying to cultivate vanilla in Europe without success. It was not until 1836 that they realized the vanilla plant was pollinated by an insect that did not live in Europe, making it impossible no matter how hard they tried. Researchers studying whether monkeys could recognize themselves in mirrors observed that the first thing they did after realizing it was themselves was inspect parts of their body they normally could not see. They even twisted into unusual positions to observe themselves better. In the 1920s, there was beach police responsible for measuring the length of women's swimsuits to ensure no one wore one that was too small or revealing. If a woman did not comply with the protocol, she was forced to cover up or go home. And in some extreme cases, they were arrested. Giraffes only sleep between 5 and 30 minutes every 24 hours. When they sleep, they rest their head on their own body. In Australia, kangaroo meat is sold in supermarkets and served as a dish in restaurants. It is promoted as a healthier alternative to beef due to its low fat percentage. When tomatoes arrived in Europe in the 16th century and began to become popular in food, many people saw them as a suspicious fruit. Some even believed they were a preferred ingredient of witches in flying potions, or that they could turn people into werewolves. In 2002, a soccer team in Madagascar lost 149-0. All were own goals. They did this as a protest against a controversial refereeing decision in the previous match. Dactyliotum bicolor, also known as the rainbow grasshopper, has unusual colors compared to normal green grasshoppers. It lives in North America, and its colors are believed to be due to aposematism, which refers to animals having unusual colors to deter predators. Beavers' teeth can have a slightly orange or very orange coloration. This is due to the high concentration of iron they contain, and it is one of the reasons their teeth are among the strongest and most durable in the animal kingdom. The coefficient of friction of a banana peel on a wooden floor is 0.083. while that of ice is 0.05. That means a banana peel is almost as slippery as ice. The first place where diamonds were found was in India more than 2,400 years ago, and it was believed to be the only place where they existed until 1725, when they were found in Brazil. Before that, all the diamonds in the world had been extracted in India. Astronauts need to have good air circulation while they sleep, because if everything is static in zero gravity, a bubble of their own exhaled carbon dioxide slowly forms around their head, which can cause them to wake up abruptly with a sensation of suffocating. In the early 20th century, cycling races were held that lasted up to 6 days, in which the winner was the one who covered the greatest distance during that period of time. They were popular with audiences, but resulted in extreme exhaustion for cyclists, who slept so little that they even hallucinated while pedaling. Today, 6-day versions are still held, but with mandatory rest periods. During periods of economic crisis over the past 200 years in different parts of the world, people used the fabric from flour, sugar, seed, and other food sacks to make dresses. This became such a popular practice that producers began offering sacks with different printed patterns, including flowers and other designs. There is a city in China called Wuzhen that has canals running through its streets, giving it an appearance similar to Venice, the most well-known floating city in the world. Wuzhen was built in the 14th century and preserves some structures that were built during the Ming Dynasty. The Hammerschwand is the tallest outdoor elevator in Europe. It is located in Switzerland and lifts its passengers 502 feet to the top of a viewpoint in less than 1 minute. The video game company TinyBuild released the game No Time to Explain as a measure against piracy. Instead of blocking the game or adding restrictions, They themselves released a torrent version for free, with the difference that all the characters were dressed as pirates. The stretching of muscles that happens when we yawn or when we are tired is known as pandiculation, but in medicine it is now considered an obsolete term. Many members of European royalty, from medieval times to the modern era, believed that bathing was bad for health, since they thought that because water opened the pores, it made the body more susceptible to disease. King Louis XIV of France only bathed a few times during his life. The pirate Blackbeard did exist in real life. His name was Edward Teach, and he lived in the early 18th century, the golden age of piracy in the Caribbean. He had up to 70 pirates at his disposal. However, he was known for using intimidating tactics to avoid fighting and obtain loot more easily. One of these was tying lit slow matches under his hat and in his beard to appear surrounded by smoke as if it were magic. The Irish low-cost airline Ryanair decided to adopt a marketing strategy in which they mocked their own poor service, their customers, and other airlines. It had such a strong impact that they avoided going bankrupt. Other brands have been encouraged to create an unusual image on social media, such as Wendy's, KFC, and Duolingo. In the small city of Ramigala in Lithuania, a goat beauty contest is held every year in which the goats also participate in a parade, and it is a tradition that has existed for decades. In April 2018, in Saudi Arabia, movie theaters reopened after being banned for more than 35 years. And at the beginning of 2021, the first drive-in theater opened in the capital, Riyadh. Dinosaur fossils have been found on every continent in the world, including Antarctica, but the highest concentration is found in North America and Europe. During the celebration of the Festival of Lights in Nepal, there is a special day called Kukur Tihar, dedicated to honoring dogs for their loyalty, companionship, and their role as guardians and protectors. During this day, all dogs, including stray ones, are decorated with flower garlands and a mark on their forehead, and they are given plenty of food. The first Pokemon games, released in 1996, occupy less than 1 megabyte of data. In context, a single high-resolution image of Pikachu that you find on the internet weighs more than the entire game. To achieve this, they used different programming tricks, such as reusing models or sprites, and writing the music directly into the code. This allowed them to reduce the data. Some Google servers operate at a constant temperature of approximately 77 and 95 degrees Fahrenheit and do not require refrigeration other than normal ventilation. They are considered very efficient. However, workers can only stay there for a few minutes. Director Peter Jackson briefly appeared in every film of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, first as a townsman in Bree, then as a soldier of Rohan in the second film, and in the third as one of the corsairs of Umbar, who receives a direct arrow from Legolas. The anime X-Arm, released in 2021 as a Crunchyroll original, was heavily criticized for its use of digital effects combined with two-dimensional animation and its low quality in character movement. The studio responsible for its visual production, Flight, had no animation experience. The vast majority of its technicians came from live action or video games. Unlike other planets that take their names from Greek mythology, the moons of the planet Uranus are named after characters from works by William Shakespeare, such as Umbriel, Cordelia, and Ariel. Ferrari car engines are specifically manufactured to have musical harmony. The air intakes are shaped so the airflow produces the third and sixth harmonic sounds. On February 3, 1947, the lowest temperature in Canada's history was recorded. It was minus 79.6 degrees Fahrenheit in the Snag region, which is similar to the average surface temperature of Mars. A large Starbucks coffee has the same amount of caffeine as 4 cans of Red Bull, and, in general, all energy drinks have less caffeine than coffee. According to a study conducted in 1995, ballet dancers have a higher pain tolerance than the general average of people. Norway's electrical grid is almost 100% hydroelectric. This led the government to run campaigns to promote electric cars by imposing high taxes on fuel-powered vehicles depending on their emissions. The plans worked so well that more than 80% of the cars in that country are electric. Now there are so many that the government has already been reducing benefits and subsidies for at least a couple of years. In the movie Forrest Gump, the fictional city of Greenbow, Alabama, is inspired by illustrations by the artist Norman Rockwell. One of them, Girl with a Black Eye, was recreated in a scene. Actor Viggo Mortensen bonded so well with the 2 horses he rode during the filming of The Lord of the Rings, where he played Aragorn, that when production ended, he bought them from their owner. Until recently, it was believed that the first European artist to create oil paintings was the Dutch painter Jan van Eyck in the 1940s. However, works by the Italian painter Masolino da Panicale from a decade earlier were found. There are color blindness or color perception disorder tests that are the opposite. Only color-blind people can find the hidden word. The aurora borealis refers to the luminescent phenomenon that comes from variations in the magnetosphere caused by solar winds and stands out for its striking lights. However, aurora borealis only includes those that occur at the North Pole. At the South Pole, there is its own version, which is actually the same thing, but it is called aurora australis. The Greek word boreas does mean north, and the Latin word auster means south, and aurora is the Roman goddess of dawn. The slinky was invented by naval engineer Richard James in 1943 while he was working with tension springs. One day, he saw how one of his prototypes fell down a staircase and kept moving. That was when he realized it would be a great toy. It is estimated that the rise in ghost stories during the Victorian era is due to the introduction of gas lamps, which release carbon monoxide. If inhaled in excess, it can cause hallucinations in people. The first socks ever made were found in Egypt near the Nile River. They're from around the year 500, and the toes are divided into two because they were designed to be worn with sandals so they would not break. In most countries, more than half of internet traffic comes from only two sites. There was once a variant of Coca-Cola called White Coca-Cola. It was produced in 1946 by special request of Soviet Union Marshal Georgy Zhukov. Its flavor was the same as the original version, except that it was transparent and was bottled with a red star on the cap so that when the marshal drank it, people would think it was vodka. In Japan, a transparent version of Coca-Cola was also released, but that was many years later. Some Chrysler automobiles in the 1950s were equipped with a vinyl record player system. However, this did not last long since they could break very easily. Christopher Columbus and his crew were the first Europeans to see and taste pineapples. This happened on his second voyage to the Americas in 1493. There is a video game released in 24 based on the movie Fight Club, except it does not have much to do with the movie except for the fighting aspect. One of the unlockable characters is the lead singer of Limp Bizkit, Fred Durst, who obviously did not appear in the movie. The SR-71 Blackbird aircraft could travel so fast that its fuselage expanded several inches when it reached maximum speed and temperature. For that reason, it was designed so that the tanks would not be completely sealed until the metal heated up during flight. Although the gaps were covered with special paste, after a single use, upon returning to the ground, fuel would begin to leak out. A woman in Great Britain made a lamp from a vessel. She drilled a hole so the electrical cord could come out without knowing that the vessel was Chinese porcelain from the Qing dynasty, made more than 250 years ago and worth more than $300,000. Appraisers say its potential value has now dropped to less than $26,000. Sony executives wanted to name the movie The Karate Kid from 2010 Kung Fu Kid, since karate is not practiced in the film, and the term Kung Fu better represents the martial arts shown. But producer Jerry Weintraub insisted on keeping the original title from the first movie in 1984. In 1930, the name of the planet Pluto was invented by an 11-year-old girl named Venetia Burney. She suggested the name to her grandfather, who then suggested it to a friend who was an astronomer and professor at the University of Oxford, who at that time was one of the people responsible for establishing the names of celestial bodies. There is an animal called the raccoon dog, or tanuki, that, despite looking like a raccoon, is actually one of the oldest dog species. It is native to Japan and is not allowed to be kept as a pet because it is a highly protected animal in that region. The Army of Paraguay has naval forces, despite not having direct access to the sea. They are responsible for defending the country's water resources. After the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie was released, Walkman cassette players became so popular that they began selling for thousands of dollars online. For this reason, during the production of the second movie, they preferred to make replicas. People who are in love can synchronize their heartbeats when they look directly into each other's eyes. In ancient Egypt, people were usually paid in pieces of bread and beer. They also sometimes received seeds, meat, and clothing, which were considered basic necessities. Industrial entrepreneur Andrew Carnegie reached a fortune of $372 billion. In comparison, today the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, has $191 billion. Some castles in Japan have floors specifically designed to make a sound when someone walks on them. This was done on purpose so no one could walk through the hallways without being detected. The country where a Big Mac hamburger is most expensive is Switzerland, where it can cost up to $8, while in India, Pakistan, and Indonesia, it costs less than $3. According to data from the Big Mac Index, which measures purchasing power parity, although this index excludes Africa almost entirely due to the lack of McDonald's on the continent. Nut theft is an increasingly large problem in different parts of the world. Organized and sophisticated operations are carried out to transport them illegally. This is because they are difficult to trace, and a trailer container full of them can be worth up to $500,000. In the city of Paris, at the beginning of the 20th century, there was a moving street with a wooden platform that moved at 6.2 miles per hour so people could travel. It was nicknamed the Wooden Serpent and measured more than 1.9 miles. For hundreds of years, farmers believed that there were small beings living beneath their fields, the elemental earth spirits called gnomes. The quality of the harvest depended on their mood. It was not until the 19th century in Germany that garden gnomes began to be manufactured based on these beliefs, but by then, they were mainly decoration. There is a musical road in Lancaster, California. It was created for a Honda television commercial. It has textures that make sounds when you drive over it at 50 miles per hour, and it is supposed to play a piece of classical music, but something went wrong during its construction, and it is completely out of tune. The technology company Apple could not register the name iPhone in Brazil until 2013 because the company Gradiente had already registered the trademark in the South American country since 2000. To this day, both corporations can sell phones with the name iPhone. Neither has exclusivity. In Rotterdam, Netherlands, they built a floating forest. They took trees that had been removed due to construction and placed them on special boats to save them. Bhutan is one of the most environmentally friendly countries. They once planted more than 100,000 trees to celebrate the birth of their new prince. The pygmy tarsier is a primate that, since the early 20th century, had been classified as extinct until, in the year 2001, was captured by accident. Later, in 2008, an additional group was found that researchers still track to this day to help preserve the species. It is known for its resemblance to the character from the movie Gremlins. It is the only primate left in the world that is carnivorous. Hagfish, also called slime eels, have no jaw or bones and can even tie themselves into knots like a rope. To capture their prey, they use a transparent, viscous substance similar to slime. The star in the Sword of the Orion constellation is not actually a star. It is the Orion Nebula and is the only nebula that can be observed in the night sky without using a telescope. The aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth has a reverse osmosis system capable of producing more than 500 tons of purified water per day taken directly from seawater. It is possible to cry in space. However, tears do not fall like they normally would on Earth. They just stay there next to the eyes. In 1961, an engineer developed a flying submarine. When it was completed, he demonstrated it in 1964, where it managed to submerge to a depth of 6 feet and 7 inches, and then fly to an altitude of 33 feet. Even so, they did not become popular. Actor Nicolas Cage has a pet crow, for which he built a geodesic dome measuring 16.4 feet so it could fly. He mentioned that it understands some words, and that when he enters his house, it says hello, and when he leaves, it says goodbye. Crows are very good at imitating sounds. The Good Country Index is a ranking that measures the countries that contribute the most good to the world, evaluating areas such as science and technology, culture, peace and security, and planet and climate. It was created by academic Simon Anholt and currently has Finland, Sweden, Germany, Denmark, and France in the top positions. The creator of Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama, hated the 2009 film adaptation Dragon Ball Evolution so much that it made him completely rethink the script of the movie Battle of Gods, which was eventually released in 2013. In 1958, a Cessna aircraft was kept in flight for 2 months. This was achieved by refueling it using trucks that matched its speed while it flew at low altitude. Saccharidus coronarius was a nearly microscopic marine creature shaped like a sack or balloon that lived 535 million years ago. After research, it was concluded that it is the oldest known ancestor of humans. Being a gondolier in Venice is one of the most exclusive professions that can exist. There are only around 430 licenses, and to obtain one, an applicant must go through years of training, practical and theoretical exams, and must know all the streets of Venice as well as its history. The first official female gondolier did not arrive until the year 2010. The creator of the series Two and a Half Men and The Big Bang Theory, Chuck Lorre, wrote the lyrics for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme song in 1987. According to a study from the University of Alaska, hamsters process alcohol much better than humans, being able to consume 7 times higher percentages than people without showing symptoms. This is because they are accustomed to eating fermented fruits that fall from trees and contain alcohol. In 2009, archaeologists discovered fossils of a primitive species of crocodile that galloped similarly to how horses do today. They lived 100 million years ago and coexisted with dinosaurs. Spanish conquistadors used to throw platinum into rivers because they considered it garbage since they could not easily melt it with the technology of the time. They called it platina, or low-quality silver. Today, platinum is used for catalysts, sensors, electrodes, and many more technological components, in addition to jewelry. It is so expensive that all the platinum extracted so far would fit inside an Olympic swimming pool. In 2015, workers at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo accidentally broke the beard of King Tutankhamun's mask and then glued it back on with regular glue so no one would notice. But months later, it was discovered, and they had to remove it and restore it professionally for months. Leonardo da Vinci created blueprints to build a mechanical knight, a creation similar to a robot or animatronic that operated using pulley mechanisms. When these blueprints were found almost 500 years later and built according to the instructions, the design worked perfectly. The largest spiderwebs in the world are built by Ankylosarcus eximius spiders, which are very social and work as a community. More than 50,000 spiders can live in one of these webs until there are too many and they must form new colonies. To put into perspective the amount of time humans have existed, if you placed the entire history of life on planet Earth into a period of 1 hour, during the first 50 minutes, there were only microbes and single-celled organisms. In the last 10 minutes, animals appeared, and the entire history of humans would fit into just the final second. The celestial bodies seen in the famous photograph, The Pillars of Creation, are believed to no longer exist for 6,000 years. This is because a cloud of stellar dust can be seen approaching, and since they are 7,000 light-years away, what we are seeing already happened a long time ago. During the filming of the 1979 movie Apocalypse Now in the Philippines, local people observed how the actors brought surfboards to practice in the waves. This caused an increase in the popularity of surfing in the country, and many who were inspired that day later became professionals. The cotton candy machine was invented in 1921 by Joseph Lascaux, who was a dentist that liked inventing things. A few years earlier, in 1904, a very similar machine had also been invented by a dentist named William Morrison and displayed at the St. Louis World's Fair. Who knows what dentists have with cotton candy? According to recent studies, the fur of animals adapted to live in cold climates has hollow spaces that store air, which allows them to protect themselves from temperature. The diameter of the hollow spaces varies depending on the time of year, preventing the fur from being too warm in summer. The seat of Formula One drivers can reach a temperature of more than 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and drivers can lose up to 8.8 pounds of weight in a race, since they have less than 0.26 gallons of water available to drink inside the car. It is estimated that most elevator door close buttons are not connected and do not perform any action when pressed. The doors close automatically with a timer. Once, the tallest man in the world, Bao Shishun, used his 3.3-foot right arm to remove plastic that had become stuck in the stomach of 2 dolphins. His actions saved their lives and were the last method attempted after trying everything else. Nasir al-Din al-Tusi was a scholar of the 13th century who left a major impact in fields such as astronomy and mathematics, where he devised the Tusi couple, which centuries later would be used by Nicholas Copernicus to propose the heliocentric theory. He also formulated proto-evolutionary ideas about the gradual change of nature, which is like a basic concept of Darwin's theory of evolution. The Canadian mining company Goldcorp Inc. once offered $500,000 to anyone who could help them locate gold deposits. Shortly after, they rewarded a winner and managed to extract more than $6 billion in gold from the site. The actor who originally played Dumbledore in the first and second Harry Potter films, Richard Harris, was not going to accept the role because his health was declining. But he accepted when his 11-year-old granddaughter told him she would never speak to him again if he did not take the role. A millionaire from Abu Dhabi named Hamad bin Hamdan Al Nahyan wrote his name in the desert in letters measuring more than 3,280 feet so it could be seen from space. Tequila exists thanks to bats, since it is made from the agave plant, which is mainly pollinated by these animals. In fact, the popularity of tequila in recent years saved the maguey bat species from extinction. There is a city in Australia where all 200 residents live underground in an abandoned opal mine. The residents have all services, including electricity and drainage, and every time they make renovations, they find large amounts of opal. In 2005, Bill Gates received an honorary title of the Order of the British Empire from Queen Elizabeth II. However, since he is not British, he cannot use the title Sir before his name. The total cost of climbing Mount Everest ranges between $60,000 and $120,000. This includes permits, equipment, supplies, and specialized local guides. The longest living animals that have been discovered and verified are a clam that lived 507 years, a Greenland shark that lived 392 years, and a bowhead whale that lived 211 years. Crows are among the most intelligent animals that exist. They have the habit of hiding their food so other crows do not find it, but they are so smart that they discover it quickly and must invent new ways to hide it. The first flexible hose ever created was made from ox intestines and was used by the Greeks to extinguish fires. They used the stomach to forcefully launch the water. There is a museum in Croatia called Froggyland, where there are more than 500 taxidermied frogs positioned as if they were performing human activities, such as being in a circus or studying in school. The inventor of the most popular electric guitars of all time, Leo Fender, did not actually know how to play. He never learned and did not like rock and roll. Even so, major rock figures such as Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix have used his guitars. The characters in the Super Smash Bros. Video games are toys used in imaginary battles similar to how children play. That was the concept in the first two games, which can be seen in the intro. However, starting with the third game, it was no longer used. Cats can experience something called whisker stress from having to eat from a pet bowl that is too small. This happens because they are very sensitive to confined spaces. Your cat may have stress if it does things such as trying to remove the food with its paws or knocking it over. In Norway, less than 4% of all monetary transactions are made using cash. The government even had to force banks to maintain cash services because they were already considering them unnecessary. Car races, or any type of vehicle racing, were banned in Switzerland starting in 1955 due to the Le Mans disaster that occurred that year. It was not until 2015 that this law was changed and the government allowed racing again, but only for electric cars. When Australian Alan Jones won the Austrian Grand Prix of Formula One in 1977, the organizers did not have a copy of the national anthem available to play during the celebration, and instead had a man play Happy Birthday on a trumpet. The telephone, invented in 1876, took 75 years to reach 50 million users. In comparison, the application Pokemon Go took only 19 days to reach that same number of 50 million users in 2016. In Australia, in 1984, there were still Aboriginal people who had never had contact with modern civilization. It was a family of 9 people who shortly afterward integrated into a nearby city. The Empire State Building was the first structure in the world with more than 100 floors. It has a height of 1,250 feet and was the tallest building in the world from 1930 to 1970. Blue whale calves weigh around 3 tons and drink 50 gallons of milk each day. When they grow up, they can weigh up to 200 tons. They are the largest animal in the world. In the scene from the movie Spider-Man, where Peter Parker saves Mary Jane from falling while also catching all the food she was carrying on a tray, there are no digital effects. Actor Tobey Maguire had to catch everything for real and succeeded after 156 takes. The tray and food had glue applied to make it easier. According to a survey conducted by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the most essential invention for humanity is the toothbrush. It beat other inventions such as the automobile, the computer, and the telephone. There was a period of 15 years when the flag of France was completely white. From 1815 to 1830, it was established by the monarchy as a symbol of purity. The Soviet space probe, Phobos 1, became unusable in 1988 because a technician sent instructions without properly reviewing the code. Later, they realized that only one dash was missing, and because of that, it lost its trajectory and could not be recovered. Although it is still a stereotype that India has thousands of snake charmers on the streets, in reality, it has been illegal in that country for more than 25 years in order to protect animals, and those who practiced it now work in other occupations. According to studies, smoking hookah is not healthier than smoking cigarettes, and they state that it can even cause the body to absorb more toxic substances. If you are at either of the poles of the planet, you weigh 0.5% more than if you are near the equator. You also weigh more at sea level than at the top of a mountain. This is due to the flattening of the Earth and gravitational force. The oldest rock in the world is bedrock exposed on the surface near Hudson Bay in Canada. It is believed to be 4,300,000,000 years old and already existed when Earth was only 200 million years old and there were still no oceans or atmosphere. The digital effects of the movie Jurassic Park were so revolutionary that they inspired filmmakers to create more ambitious projects. For example, it inspired George Lucas to begin working on the Star Wars prequels and Peter Jackson to finally decide to film the Lord of the Rings adaptation. It was discovered a few years ago that some bears in Russia are very attracted to smelling leftover airplane fuel that remains in discarded barrels. This became so frequent that they have entered facilities just to search for fuel. Piano music at a tempo of 60 beats per minute helped calm dogs that had anxiety from hearing fireworks. According to a study, 85% of the dogs became calmer, and many of them fell asleep with the music. When Barack Obama was campaigning to become president of the United States in 2008, he appeared in advertisements in 18 different video games, such as Madden, Burnout Paradise, and Skate. Google's homepage has always had a minimalist design, but this was not intentional. Founder Larry Page did not have much knowledge of HTML, so that was all he could create at first. This ended up contributing to its success because people liked that it was not as complex as other search engines. Today, soldiers in the German army are allowed to disobey an order if they believe it goes against human dignity. Actor Mark Hamill improvised his line where he mentions that he cannot see well with the stormtrooper uniform in Star Wars. In fact, it was a real complaint during production. However, they liked it and kept it in the movie. In October 1992, a meteorite fell on a Chevy Malibu car in New York. It is one of the most documented meteorite impacts in history. It was recorded by more than 16 cameras. This car is currently displayed in a museum. Gorillas often make vocalizations similar to humming or singing happy melodies while eating. And if it is their favorite food, or if they have plenty of food, they sing louder and more enthusiastically. It is a way they communicate with each other. Haika crabs have markings on their backs that resemble the face of a samurai, according to Japanese art. But this was not created naturally. Fishermen who found one like this would return it to the sea because they believed it had the spirit of a fallen samurai. Years later, almost all of them have this shape because it favored their survival. There is a Japanese belief that says normal objects can come to life and gain a spirit after a long time. It is called Tsukumogami, and it is said that the Pokemon Voltorb is related to that they were once Pokeballs that came to life. Painter Pablo Picasso once claimed the invention of disruptive camouflage, or dazzle camouflage, which was mainly used in World War I to confuse the position of ships. This was because he considered it very similar to cubism. NASA has two twin satellites called GRACE, whose job is to chase each other in orbit around the planet to detect gravitational anomalies. They are affectionately called Tom and Jerry. In 1984, New Zealand Prime Minister Robert Muldoon drank too much one night and, under the influence of alcohol, decided to call a general election, which he ended up losing. When inventor Thomas Edison proposed to his future wife, he did it in Morse code, and she responded yes, also in Morse code. As we know, Thomas Edison created the quadruplex telegraph, which allowed sending and receiving up to 4 telegraph messages at the same time, which popularized its use. A man in China named Poon Lim survived for 133 days on a raft after a shipwreck in 1942. He stayed alive by fishing, hunting birds, and even defended himself from a shark using a water bottle. Disney attempted a campaign in 1990 where they claimed they would be the first to put a woman on currency in the United States. They put Minnie Mouse on bills that could only be used in the company's parks. However, women had already appeared on currency in that country, such as Martha Washington and Pocahontas in the 19th century, and if fictional characters are included, then also the Statue of Liberty. Most of the cities with the largest populations in Canada are located at points that are farther south on the planet than the city of London, England. However, there are also settlements in Canada that are much farther north, within the Arctic Circle. In Cuba, there is a law that requires official government vehicles to pick up anyone who needs transportation somewhere, which is known as hitchhiking. The British Parliament established a law in 1770 that banned lipstick and stated that if a woman seduced someone using that cosmetic, she would be accused of practicing witchcraft. Musician Post Malone got his stage name by putting his real name, Austin Post, into an online rapper name generator. Similarly, Donald Glover got his stage name, Childish Gambino, using another internet name generator. Researchers discovered that children who spend time on phones or tablets tend to have more close friends. However, they also have problems such as sleep and attention disorders. Coffee was so important in the formation of Turkish culture that the word breakfast in Turkish literally translates as before coffee, and the word for the color brown translates as the color of coffee, meaning the color is named after the drink. In East Germany, they created their own cola drink called Vita Cola, but its sales dropped almost completely when the Berlin Wall was removed and Pepsi began being sold throughout Germany. However, today in the state of Thuringia, it is still the best-selling drink, even surpassing Coca-Cola. Dogs do not have the ability to feel guilt, shame, or remorse. However, when their owners yell at them or scold them, they can feel sadness, which some people may confuse with guilt. There are molds that can change the shape of babies' ears in just 6 weeks. This is used when the ear cartilage is bent or has an unusual appearance. In Armenia, chess is a mandatory subject taught in both private and public schools, and it must be passed in order to advance to the next grade. In 1929, aviator Jimmy Doolittle made the first airplane flight without windows. The aircraft was completely covered with fabric, and the entire flight, from takeoff to landing, was done using only navigation instruments such as the gyroscope and altimeter. In the city of Magnitogorsk, Russia, there is a mountain made almost entirely of iron. It is considered a geological anomaly, and for this reason, iron mining is the main activity in the area. Cats, lions, and all felines in general cannot taste sweet things. They are the only mammals that do not have taste receptors capable of detecting sweetness. The war between the Romans and the Persians is the longest conflict recorded in all of history. It lasted 721 years, and its end marked the beginning of the Middle Ages. Writing by hand using a pencil or pen has decreased so much in recent years that, in a survey conducted in Great Britain, 1 out of 3 people mentioned that they had not written anything by hand in the past 6 months. Scientists in Berlin, Germany, had adults play the video game Super Mario 64 for half an hour a day for 1 month. At the end, the volunteers showed an increase in gray matter, demonstrating the relationship between video games and increased brain volume in certain regions. In the United States, around 12,000 injuries caused by falling televisions occur each year. The largest earthworm in the world is the giant Gippsland earthworm, which is native to Australia and can reach up to 9 feet and 10 inches in length. Craftswoman Susan Beatrice became known for making steampunk-style sculptures with parts from antique watches representing many things, especially animals. People who live near the stairs that became famous from the scene in the movie Joker in the Bronx, New York, expressed their rejection with signs and graffiti because hundreds of fans went there to take photos imitating the Joker to post on social media. One of the graffiti messages said, "My poverty is not your photo session." Each liter of petroleum originated from approximately 23 tons of plants and other organic waste over millions of years. The smallest prison in the world is located on the island of Sark in Guernsey, an island between Great Britain and France. It only has 2 cells and a small corridor. It was built in 1856 and is still in use today. Parasites can have parasites that are called hyperparasites, and these parasites of parasites can also have their own parasites. According to data from the World Health Organization, 5 million people are bitten by snakes each year worldwide, most in Africa and South Asia. Real ninjas in Japan did not wear black. According to museums containing historical artifacts, the best color to wear at night to avoid detection is dark blue. In different regions of Central Europe, Santa Claus, or Saint Nicholas, did not travel alone delivering gifts. He usually had a companion who acted as his evil counterpart. For example, Krampus, a horned creature who punished disobedient children and even had a sack to take them away. In Germany, there was Knecht Ruprecht. In the Netherlands, Zwarte Piet. And in France, Père Fouettard. These figures served as an archaic form of education for children through reward or punishment, which today is obviously obsolete. However, these characters still appear in costumes, memes, and even in movies. Mosquitoes can detect a source of carbon dioxide from a distance of more than 82 feet. This is the mechanism they use to find their victims. While movies have, on average, 1,250 different shots, the animated movie Akira contains nearly double, 2,212. Additionally, the total number of frames is also double or triple that of typical animated films, with a total of 160,000 individual images. Queen guitarist Brian May told bassist John Deacon to learn how to play the double bass to record the song he had composed called 39, but he said it as a joke. However, 2 days later, Deacon already had a double bass in the studio and had learned to play it. The first Ferrari car, Model 125S, built by Enzo Ferrari in 1947, abandoned the first race it entered due to mechanical problems. It had a V12 engine of 92 cubic inches, something unusual for the time when most cars used larger engines with fewer cylinders. 2 weeks later, the same car won its first race. Currently, no original 125S exists because it was dismantled and reused. Only replicas or reconstructions exist. The movie Paranormal Activity had a production cost of only $15,000 and was so successful at the box office that it grossed $193 million. According to research from the Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences, people who eat spicy dishes 6 to 7 times per week have 14% less probability of dying prematurely compared to people who eat spicy food less than 2 times per week. This study was surely sponsored by a hot sauce brand. In 1958, Bank of America sent 60,000 residents of Fresno, California, a plastic card with $500 in credit as an experiment. They thought that if it did not work, no one would find out, but it turned out to work very well because years later it became what is now Visa. In 1932, Australia attempted to control the emu population with soldiers and machine guns because they were eating wheat crops. But the emus won the war. They moved in small groups, ran fast, and dispersed, unintentionally using the best military tactics. Since it resulted in a disaster, they decided instead to provide subsidies and give fences to farmers. There were computers that used ternary language instead of the traditional binary. One of them, built by the Soviets in 1958, had unique advantages such as better energy efficiency and cheaper components. The inventor of automated teller machines, John Shepard Barron, planned for PIN codes to be 6 digits or more, but his wife could only remember 4 digits. Therefore, he changed it, and that remains the standard today. According to rumors, the song Louie Louie by the Kingsmen from 1963 was investigated for years by the FBI because they believed it contained obscene subliminal messages. But the band always said it is a normal love song. At the Helsinki Olympic Games in 1952, Luxembourg won a gold medal in the 4,921 feet athletics event. This result was so unexpected that when the time came for the award ceremony, the band did not know how to play the country's anthem, so they tried to improvise a neutral march similar to La Marseillaise. Starting with the following Olympic Games, they already brought all national anthems. Butterflies lay their eggs on plant leaves attached with a glue that is almost impossible to separate. Scientists have tried to study its compounds to manufacture it, but it has not yet been replicated. The famous photo showing Nikola Tesla calmly reading while his Tesla coil releases electricity into the air was created using a double exposure technique. It would have been impossible to do it at the same time without being struck by the discharges. A moment is a unit of time measurement used in medieval times, equivalent to 90 seconds. There are 40 moments in 1 hour. In China, natural gas has been used for more than 2,000 years, extracted by drilling deep wells from which it was transported through portable bamboo pipelines as an archaic form of gas cylinders. Later, it was taken to factories or homes where it was used in ovens and stoves. In 2013, an ancient Egyptian city called Heraklion was discovered underwater in the Mediterranean Sea, 33 feet below the surface. It was already known to exist because it was described in ancient Greek texts and due to its importance in Egyptian trade at that time. According to the dictionary of the Royal Spanish Academy, the word with the most meanings or definitions is pasar. In total, it has 64 meanings. A university in Germany sued a student for graduating too quickly, since he obtained a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in only 4 semesters instead of 11. He achieved this with the help of 2 friends who attended classes to take notes for him when he had overlapping schedules. The leather used in Bugatti car interiors comes from cattle raised in the mountains of Austria, in places where there is no barbed wire or mosquitoes, in order to offer the most uniform finishes possible. People throw approximately $4.5 million in coins into wishing fountains each year. This happens because of the belief that they must make a wish and throw a coin for it to come true. The Japanese word kuchisabishi, which literally means lonely mouth, refers to when you are not hungry but still eat simply because your mouth feels lonely. In the 1st century, there were still wild lions in Europe. They are even mentioned in the texts of Aristotle as local fauna in Greece, but with human expansion, their territory became increasingly smaller until they disappeared from the continent. Children who speak Mandarin are more likely to develop perfect pitch. This is because words can have different meanings depending on the tone in which they are spoken in that language. This also helps them distinguish musical notes easily. All our radio and television signals become indistinguishable after traveling just a few light years into space from Earth due to the inverse square law. This means it is very unlikely that aliens are watching television broadcasts from decades ago if they are very far away. Dugongs are animals of the order Sirenia, relatives of manatees. It is believed that centuries ago, these were the animals some sailors saw that gave rise to the myth of mermaids when they confused them. Space programs contributed to most of the specialized components used to make smartphones today. Different programs such as Apollo required the creation of miniature integrated circuits, sensors such as accelerometers and gyroscopes, compact displays, optimized batteries, and systems such as GPS, which are now integrated into the device you have in your hand or pocket. In Newark, Ohio, United States, there is a building shaped like a picnic basket. It was built by a basket company in 1987 to be used as its headquarters. The mule is the most well-known hybrid animal. It is the mix of a female horse and a donkey. But there are also other hybrid animals, such as the liger, which is a lion and a tigress, the zebras, which is a zebra and a donkey, or the kama, which is the mix between a camel and a llama. And they look like mini camels. Telephones have an asterisk and a pound sign because when Bell Labs developed the first push-button telephone, its system had 2 tones that were not associated with any number, and that is what they decided to assign to them. In internet culture, liminal spaces are places with an empty, uninhabited visual aesthetic that evoke nostalgia, like the photo that popularized the backrooms. In reality, this term comes from the Latin word limes, which means threshold or boundary, and it is used to describe intermediate moments between phases of life, cultural phases, or between physical spaces such as hallways or waiting rooms that are neither destination nor origin. Mangalitsa pigs, native to Hungary, have wool similar to sheep, and their meat is considered the best tasting of all pigs, similar to Kobe beef. That is why their value has increased significantly in recent years. Despite being more than twice as far from the Sun as Mercury, Venus is the planet in the solar system with the highest surface temperature, 869 degrees Fahrenheit, enough to melt aluminum. This is due to the high concentration of carbon dioxide in its atmosphere, which prevents heat from escaping, known as the greenhouse effect. Despite ants having a reputation for being very hard-working, it has been observed that only 2.6% of ants in a colony are active at any given time. 72% are inactive half the time, and 25% never work. The Nickelodeon TV show Lazy Town, which was filmed in Iceland, is the children's show that has cost the most money to produce. Each episode cost around $1 million, which is 5 times the average per episode of similar shows. The high budget is due to the combination of digital and practical effects, the set that contained one of the largest green screens in the world, and, in general, the cost of living in Iceland. Some Egyptologists sent a small vehicle with a camera into a shaft in the Great Pyramid and found a stone door with 2 copper handles to open it. To this day, it has not been opened and no one knows what is inside. Most tanks used during World War II, despite appearing very large in photos, were actually about the size of a modern subcompact pickup truck. However, their total weight was equivalent to that of 10 pickup trucks. The first shopping cart was invented in 1936 and was very simple, the size of 2 baskets. Over time, shopping carts have increased considerably in size. This is so people subconsciously think they have bought little and continue filling it. There was a time between the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century when tattoos became fashionable in circuses. There were tattooed women as attractions, but they were also used among European royalty as exotic fashion accessories. Even, supposedly, Queen Victoria of England had a small blue star tattoo, and her son and grandson also had tattoos. According to the creator of the animated series Rick and Morty, Dan Harmon, to write the famous Pickle Rick episode, he took inspiration from the Breaking Bad episode 4 Days Out, in which Walter White and Jesse are stranded in the desert and must use their intelligence to escape. In the 1930s, many nearly perfectly carved stone spheres were discovered in Costa Rica. The largest weighs 16 tons, and no one knew where they came from or who made them. However, later studies determined they may have been sculpted by the pre-Columbian Diquis culture. It is believed that the reason why almost all computerized voices used in virtual assistants and GPS today are female voices is because of HAL 9000, the villain in the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, which is an intelligence that rebels and wants to kill the astronauts, and its voice is male. Prototaxides are organisms that existed on Earth more than 370 million years ago. They measured 26 feet and grew in the shape of a root. At that time, trees did not yet exist, so they were the life form that reached the greatest height. When fossils were studied, they were believed for years to be plants, until they were classified as giant fungi. Despite their appearance resembling a flower, sea anemones are actually creatures that have venomous tentacles to paralyze their victims with a neurotoxin. There was a species of bear native to North Africa called the Atlas bear, which suffered a population decline due to the Roman Empire's demand for animals for gladiator events. It finally went extinct in the 1870s due to hunting. In 2019, workers at a potato chip factory in Hong Kong found a World War I grenade in a shipment of potatoes from France. They found it just before it entered the processing plant. After a concert that was full of technical problems and delays in 2009 in Manchester, the band Oasis announced that they would offer refunds to attendees who requested them. But to avoid returning money, they signed the checks as autographs and added a special logo with a stamp. Hundreds of fans chose to keep them instead as collectible items. The place where it is most common to observe the northern lights is in Fairbanks, Alaska. On average, they can be seen during 240 nights each year. The complete performance of the band Creedence at the Woodstock Festival in 1969 was not released until 2019, 5 decades later. The reason was that vocalist John Fogerty did not consider it very important. There was a statue in front of the Capitol in the United States that represented Christopher Columbus holding the world in his hand, while a Native American woman appears frightened next to him. The statue was removed in 1958 after protests and is currently stored in a warehouse. The One Williams Center, a skyscraper located in Tulsa, Oklahoma, United States, is a half-scale replica of the Twin Towers of New York. It was designed by the same architect. There are at least 5 other similar buildings that he designed in different cities in that country. Loops on roller coasters are never circular. Instead, they are designed with an inverted teardrop shape. This is because if they were designed with perfect circular loops, riders would experience accelerations of more than 6G, which would cause injuries. The fastest commercial flight in the world takes place between 2 islands in Scotland. The total distance is less than 1 mile, and the plane remains in the air for only 47 seconds before landing. Carrot House, located in Warsaw, Poland, is the narrowest house in the world. Its widest point measures 59.8 inches. It has 2 floors, 1 bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, and living room, all within that small space. The Panama Canal was originally going to be built in Nicaragua. However, the plans changed before construction began because there was a route in Panama that was shorter and did not pass near active volcanoes. There have been discussions about building another canal through Nicaragua that would connect the 2 oceans, but none has been completed. There was a bright blue lagoon in an abandoned mine in Buxton, England, that had a water pH level so alkaline that it was considered toxic and dangerous, but people would enter it because of its striking color. To prevent this, one day in 2013, they simply dyed it black with coloring. Only one person has ever been recorded as being struck by a meteorite. It was American Anne Hodges in November 1954. She was taking a nap when suddenly a rock the size of a baseball crashed through her roof, bounced off a radio, and hit her thigh, leaving a small bruise. The country with the highest gasoline prices is Norway, despite having large oil reserves. This is because they do not apply fuel subsidies and use that money to maintain the quality of free education and infrastructure. In chemical plants and specialized manufacturing facilities, anti-static clothing must be worn. Workers who wear normal clothing risk accumulating static electrical charge with low current but high voltage, which can generate sparks that ignite vapors or destroy delicate components. This also happens frequently in very dry places such as desert regions or airplanes in flight, and also on trampolines or plastic slides. The ugliest color in the world, according to research, is Pantone 448C brown. It was chosen by some countries in the European Union and by Australia for tobacco products. It is believed that the color can make fewer people buy them. The movie Lawrence of Arabia does not contain any spoken dialogue by a woman. At 227 minutes, it is the longest film without a woman's voice. The Catwoman costume used by Michelle Pfeiffer in the movie Batman Returns from 1992 was vacuum sealed in the same way some foods are packaged in supermarkets. She had a short period of time to film her scenes because after a few minutes, she began to feel like she was going to faint. In regions near the Arctic, the sun can sometimes be observed distorted, even with a rectangular shape during polar nights. This is due to the Novaya Zemlya effect, which is a type of solar mirage and occurs because of the curvature of the Earth near the poles. Police in Japan have paintball launchers that they use to mark fleeing vehicles so they can be easily identified. The paint they use is orange and is very difficult to remove. Colombia has the largest population of hippopotamuses outside of Africa, and they are all descendants of the hippopotamuses that lived in Pablo Escobar's private zoo, which were released when his property was confiscated by the police. Today, they represent a threat to local biodiversity. In 1994, executives from the 7 largest tobacco companies testified before the United States Congress, claiming that nicotine was not addictive, despite all the scientific evidence showing otherwise. There is a restaurant in Toronto, Canada called En Noir, where there is no light at all, and you eat in complete darkness from the moment you arrive until you leave. Squirrels do not arrive at parks on their own initiative. In fact, they almost never leave forests for urban areas. When a park is full of squirrels, it is because they were brought there on purpose. To prevent civil wars, the Ottomans kept all successors to the throne confined in a palace called the Cage, where they had no contact with the outside world. The last Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed VI, lived in the cage from birth until he was 56 years old, without leaving even once. When milk is added to coffee, the fat it contains causes the body to absorb caffeine more slowly, weakening its effect. Additionally, coffee with cream stays hot 20% longer than black coffee. The northernmost inhabited place in Canada is Alert. Its inhabitants are temporary. They are usually researchers who stay only a few months due to the low temperatures. This place is closer to Moscow in Russia than to Canada's capital, Ottawa. Pancakes are one of the first recipes humans ever made, and practically every culture in the world has its classic version of this dish. Jamie Heineman, known for being a special effects expert and host of the program Mythbusters, previously specialized in things such as diving, Russian literature, and gastronomy. He is also a survival expert, owned a pet store, and trained animals. In general, you cannot distinguish the smell of your own home thanks to the instinct of olfactory adaptation. The brain is always alert to changes in smells that may indicate danger, so it ignores familiar ones. Of all the countries in the world, China is the one that pollutes the most. It is responsible for 30% of the total pollution from all countries. These pollutants mainly come from coal, oil, and natural gas. To create the character Eve in the movie WALL-E, they were inspired by a toy robot manufactured in Japan in the 1980s called Omnibot 2000. A 1-gallon bottle of McDonald's barbecue sauce from the 1990s was sold at auction for $10,000, simply because it was used on special edition hamburgers associated with basketball player Michael Jordan. In 1984, The new wave band from Great Britain, Thompson Twins, released a video game that came on a vinyl record. Players had to copy the record onto a cassette to play it on a Commodore 64 or ZX Spectrum computer. When actor Michael Keaton was chosen to play Batman in the 1989 film of this superhero, Warner Brothers received more than 50,000 letters from angry fans questioning the decision. However, he is now considered one of the best Batmans in fan debates. Because Studio Ghibli did not want to give Disney the merchandise rights to Spirited Away, the movie was only mentioned in a small section on Disney's official website, even though they were the distributors outside Japan. In 1859, there was a solar storm so intense that it overloaded telegraph networks and electrocuted some operators. Many telegraph devices also caught fire. Something similar could happen today with global communications if another solar event of this magnitude occurs. There is a building in London nicknamed Walkie Talkie that, due to its shape and the positioning of its glass, concentrated sunlight like a giant magnifying glass, even melting cars on the street. But that problem has already been fixed. Episodes of the series South Park are made in 6 days before airing. The writers, voice actors, and animators must follow strict schedules. There was only one time when they did not manage to finish an episode on time. It was in 2013, and the reason was a power outage of more than 3 hours at the studio where it is produced. Pickle juice has 20 times more sodium and 8 times more potassium than sports drinks. Many athletes drink it to prevent cramps before exercising. The Bank of Oklahoma building is a half-scale replica of the World Trade Center Twin Towers. It was designed by the same architect and completed 3 years after the towers. An average tree is composed of 1% living cells. The other 99% are structural parts of dead wood cells. The living part consists of its leaves, roots, and the layer beneath the bark called the cambium. According to the story, Isaac Newton had an apple fall while he was sitting at the base of a tree, which helped him formulate his studies on gravity. However, this did not happen in reality. This story emerged 60 years later and actually mentions that the apple fell near him, not on his head. Churches in the Philippines built by Spaniards during the colonial era used millions of egg whites mixed with cement to make it more durable. That is why egg yolks are currently used in most Filipino desserts. There were too many yolks, and they had to use them. In a city in Florida, there are 2 houses that share the same backyard fence. However, the shortest driving route between them takes 20 minutes and is more than 4.3 miles long. This is due to the urban layout of the area. There are professional screamers who provide their screams for horror movies or when needed, and many times, they are the ones actually screaming and not the main actor. They have a full range of screams that can be adapted to any situation. In 1998, former Soviet Union leader Mikhail Gorbachev appeared in a Pizza Hut commercial where he sits at a table with a child, and other customers comment on how, thanks to him, that pizzeria opened in Russia. At the end, everyone stands up and applauds him. It is truly something very strange. In a kiss lasting only 10 seconds, up to 80 million bacteria can be transmitted. However, most are not harmful. In Thailand, monkeys have been used for more than 400 years to help harvest coconuts from palm trees. This is currently one of the reasons why the country is one of the largest producers. One of these macaques can harvest an average of 1,600 coconuts per day, while a human can harvest a maximum of 80. During the Battle of Stalingrad, German soldiers defended themselves from grenades by placing nets to bounce them away. But the Russians responded by placing fishing hooks on grenades so they would get caught in the nets. A Soviet miner named Alexei Stakhanov reportedly mined 227 tons of coal in a single shift and was recognized as the best worker of all time. He even appeared on the cover of Time magazine in 1935. More than 1,200,000,000 people tuned in for at least 1 minute of the match between France and Croatia in the final of the Russia 2018 World Cup, one of the most watched sporting events of all time. It is believed that the bacteria in our intestines may influence and manipulate our mind to crave certain foods, such as sweets. It is easier to be accepted into Harvard University than to be hired at the flagship Apple store in New York. Harvard has an acceptance rate of 7%. While only 2% of applicants are hired at that Apple store. The movie Terminator included time travel because making a movie set entirely in the future would have been too expensive. At that time, they did not imagine the success it would have. Pool was so popular that it directly contributed to the invention of plastic, since ivory was too expensive and scarce to produce billiard balls, and demand kept increasing. The first synthetic plastic billiard balls made of bakelite appeared in 1907 and quickly replaced ivory ones. The last Beatles concert in 1966 had thousands of unsold tickets. Only 25,000 of the 42,500 available seats were filled at that time. No one knew that it would be their last large concert and one of their final live performances. It is estimated that in 1492, the year Europeans began traveling to the Americas, the population of the American continent was already approximately 60 million people, nearly the same as in Europe at that time, which was 70 million. The longest tennis match lasted more than 11 hours. It was a match between John Isner and Nicholas Mahut at the Wimbledon tournament in 2010. It took place over the course of 3 days. In the country of Burma, the Simpsons movie was banned, supposedly due to the excessive use of the colors yellow and red, which are believed to be associated with superstitions. The design of the Mini Coupe concept automobile was inspired by a baseball cap worn backward. Designer Gert Hildebrandt had the idea when he saw his son wearing a cap like that. Roman Emperor Julius Caesar and the Queen of Egypt, Cleopatra, had a son whom they named Little Caesar. This caused a scandal in Rome due to the possibility of being ruled by an Egyptian in the future. Red pandas use their tails to balance in trees, but they also use them to cover themselves like a blanket when it is cold during winter. Despite Chili's restaurant being mentioned many times and the characters visiting it in the series The Office, in reality, in the city of Scranton, Pennsylvania, where the show takes place, there is not a single restaurant from this chain, and the closest one is in another city 20 minutes away. In 1987, the FBI assigned Agent Robert Hansen the task of finding possible Russian infiltrators after FBI infiltrators in the KGB were discovered. What they did not know was that he himself was the KGB spy infiltrated in the FBI, Russia's intelligence agency. He is currently in prison serving a life sentence because they eventually found out. The new owners of the house featured in the series Breaking Bad as Walter White's home had to install a tall fence because people kept going there to throw pizzas onto the roof, imitating one of the show's most iconic scenes. Since 2002, NASA's mission statement contained the phrase, "to understand and protect our home planet." However, this phrase was removed in 2006 and almost no explanation was given. One of the most popular songs on iTunes consists of 10 minutes of silence and is called a very good song. It was named that way on purpose, so it would be the first to play in alphabetical order, since many car stereos automatically play songs in that order, giving people 10 free minutes to choose another song they like. The fur of Arctic foxes is so effective at retaining heat that it can protect them even from temperatures of -94 degrees Fahrenheit. Some birds have ultraviolet patterns in their feathers that are invisible to human eyes, but other birds can see them. The word cereal comes from the name of the Roman goddess Ceres, who was associated with agriculture and good harvests. There is also a dwarf planet discovered in 1801 that was named Ceres, and the element cerium, discovered in 1803, comes from the name of the planet. In 1993, a researcher discovered, according to him, a method to determine the area under a curve, all within a study he published. He forgot that calculus had already been invented 400 years earlier. According to numerous studies, anxiety directly affects the prefrontal cortex of the brain, the same region that is key for decision-making ability. In 2008, a man in Japan noticed that his food was mysteriously disappearing, so he installed a security camera and discovered that a homeless 58-year-old woman had been living in his closet for more than a year. It is estimated that 1/3 of humanity lives in areas with so much light pollution that it is not possible to observe the Milky Way, and they can only see a few stars and planets. Dolphins can easily identify humans when they fall into the water using echolocation. It has happened many times that they help people stay afloat during shipwrecks. Peter Benchley, the author of the novel Jaws, on which the famous movie is based, dedicated the last decade of his life to shark conservation as a way of apologizing for the negative image his work created of these animals. It has only happened once in history that a submarine has sunk or destroyed another submarine while both were submerged underwater. Generally, submarines are used for spying or attacking ships. In the 1920s, many movie theaters hired professional drummers to add sound effects to films, which at that time were silent. But later it became more popular to use jazz quartets. The handshake greeting is believed to have originated more than 2,500 years ago, when swordsmen greeted each other with the hand they used to fight. They did this as a sign of peace. The composer of the music for the original Bugs Bunny cartoons, Carl Stalling, spent 22 years with a 50-instrument orchestra at Warner Brothers Studios. He composed the music for more than 600 episodes at a rate of one per week between 1936 and 1958. Napoleon did not like La Marseillaise and did not use it as the national anthem of France during his rule because he believed the lyrics were too violent and that conflicts could be avoided by not singing it. In India, dolphin shows are banned for being morally unacceptable. Dolphins are considered highly intelligent, and there have even been discussions about recognizing them as non-human persons with their own rights. 13% of the entire population of China, which is more than 130 million people, have the last name Li or Zhang. They are the most common surnames in the country. Amazon distribution center workers walk an average of 10.6 miles each day. They must pick a different order every 33 seconds. In 2012, Nick Wallenda crossed Niagara Falls walking on a tightrope more than 197 feet above the water. When he reached the other side, he was asked for his passport, since that point marks the border between the United States and Canada, and he had crossed into the Canadian side. The Germans invented a rifle with an infrared scope during World War II. It used a battery weighing 28.7 pounds that was carried on the back like a backpack and could only be used for 15 minutes. In the year 532, a fight between two groups of fans of different chariot racing teams was recorded in Constantinople, in the Roman Empire. The conflict escalated to the point that the riots destroyed half the city and caused the deaths of more than 30,000 people. In 2009, the Large Hadron Collider had to be shut down for several days because a bird dropped a baguette inside it. It is believed that bread particles entered through an opening where power is supplied. The Great Wall of China took 22 centuries to be built. This is because it was repaired and expanded by different dynasties. Its total length is just over 12,427 miles. When the actor who plays James Bond, Daniel Craig, met the woman who is now his wife, Rachel Weisz, in 2010, he left the woman who was his fiancée at the time, who in revenge took his credit card and spent almost $1 million. In Denmark, automobiles have an additional 180% tax when sold. This means they cost more than twice as much as in other countries. Additionally, obtaining a driver's license costs the equivalent of $2,000. Tsar Peter the Great of Russia, who ruled during the 17th century, wanted Russia to be more like Europe, including the absence of beards. So he implemented a tax on facial hair, but in addition to that, he forced his guests to shave and often did it himself despite his lack of skill as a barber. In the 1940s in Iceland, attempts were made to plant bananas for local production. However, they realized it would not be possible due to the climate. Today, only a small plantation remains in a greenhouse on volcanic soil at the Agricultural University, which produces nearly 4,409 pounds of bananas per year, but they are not sold. White-tailed sea eagles that live in Scandinavia build nests so large that they have caused trees to collapse due to the extra weight. In 1991, the famous red and yellow Little Tikes toy car was the best-selling American-made vehicle, surpassing real cars from Ford and Chevrolet. In 2008, a businessman from Abu Dhabi spent $14.3 million at an auction for a license plate with the number 1. At that time, it became the most expensive license plate in the world. Potato chip bags could be quieter, but due to research, they are intentionally made noisy, since it became a characteristic sound that people associate with freshness and flavor. Michael Jackson contributed music to the video game Sonic 3. He was invited after showing that he was a big fan of the franchise. However, he was not credited because Sega did not want his name associated with the game. There is a cup that can trick your brain while drinking water, making you think it has fruity flavors so that you drink more plain water. It achieves this through its aroma. The senses of smell and taste are directly related and can influence each other. The longest uninterrupted train journey that would be possible is approximately 10,563 miles. It goes from Vietnam to Portugal. In the movie Don't Look Up, a phone number appears that people can call to get information about the asteroid approaching Earth. Those who tried calling that number in real life discovered that it redirects to a hotline offering Let's say romantic services. The bottom of the Mariana Trench is the deepest point on the planet. It is so deep that you could place 24 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other there, and the tip would barely reach the ocean's surface. Play-Doh modeling compound was invented in the 1930s to clean wallpaper from walls, but later, in 1956, they decided to sell it as a toy. Since then, more than 3 billion units have been sold, and it is one of the most recognized toys in the world. Inventor Thomas Edison spent a long time trying to create a talking doll. He placed small phonographs inside them so they could say phrases or songs, but they were not successful. And looking at them, I think it is easy to understand why. The United Kingdom is not the country where the most tea is consumed. It is actually Turkey, with 6.97 pounds per person per year. In second place is Ireland, and in third is Iran. The United Kingdom is in fourth place. The clothing and footwear brand Vans reported an increase of 7,800% in sales of its popular slip-on shoes, and it was all thanks to the characters in the series Squid Game wearing these white shoes. Different companies are developing contact lenses that replace the natural lens of the eye with one that has enhanced vision, allowing you to read the hands of a wristwatch from 33 feet away. They are expected to be available to everyone by the middle of this decade. Researchers offered children chocolate or broccoli to choose from, and 80% chose the chocolate. However, when the same test was done but the broccoli had a sticker of the Sesame Street character Elmo, 50% of the children chose the broccoli. In 1989, the owner of a tool shop paid $100 to open an unclaimed storage unit without knowing what was inside. When he opened it, he found a Lotus Esprit car modified to be a submarine prop that was used in the James Bond movie The Spy Who Loved Me in 1977. In 2013, he sold it to Elon Musk for nearly $1 million. According to studies, children laugh an average of 300 times a day, while adults only laugh 17 times. This is because children are more optimistic, curious, and creative than adults. In 2020, Japanese researchers used a drone that released soap bubbles filled with pollen to pollinate pear trees, resulting in 95% of the flowers producing fruit, the same percentage achieved with hand pollination. The uranium isotope, which is one of the main ingredients of nuclear fusion, can be easily found in seawater and is very abundant, so it could be used as fuel for fusion. 1 gallon of seawater could produce more energy than 300 gallons of gasoline. The term Third World Country emerged during the Cold War to classify the way territories were divided. The First World were capitalist countries, the Second World were communist countries, and the Third World were those not affiliated with either of these ideologies. However, its meaning has evolved and is now used to refer to countries that are less economically and socially developed. According to research, having a direct reference who works at the company where you apply for a job increases the likelihood of being hired by up to 40% compared to those who present a better resume but without references. A man named Tony Sikoria was struck by lightning in 1994 and was saved by a nurse passing by. After recovering, he realized he could hear music constantly in his head, which motivated him to buy a piano and become a classical pianist. He even created a piece called Thunder Sonata. There is a hotel shaped like a beagle dog in Idaho, United States. Guests must climb stairs to enter the bedrooms, and the head contains a special observation area. In 1987, a pilot with less than 50 hours of flight experience named Matthias Rust flew an airplane through restricted Soviet airspace from Germany and landed near Red Square in Moscow, evading its air defense system. He was sentenced to hard labor for 4 years, but was released 1 year later when the Soviet Union dissolved. In the city of Amsterdam, there is a boat inhabited by rescued cats. It is a shelter with capacity for 50 cats. Over the years, it has become a tourist attraction that now draws more than 4,500 visitors each year, tourists who contribute to its preservation. In 2004, the production company Lionsgate almost made a Black Widow movie in which Natasha would obtain her powers from an experimental suit and, in her free time, would be a professional gardener as her secret identity. The script had been presented by David Hayter, writer of the first 2 X-Men movies. The Hope Diamond, which is part of the gem collection of the Smithsonian Institution National Museum of Natural History in the United States, is also called the Cursed Stone, due to the bad luck that supposedly fell upon its previous owners, including Marie Antoinette of France. When exposed to ultraviolet light, it has a red glow, which also contributed to its reputation. The flashing light at the top of the Capitol Records Tower in Los Angeles is constantly spelling the word Hollywood in Morse code, and has done so continuously since its opening in 1956. There is a selfie toaster. You simply send your photograph, and they send you a toaster that prints your face onto toasted bread. There is also a wide variety of toasters with different images to personalize your toast. In January 1961, the United States Air Force accidentally dropped 2 nuclear bombs near the city of Goldsboro, North Carolina, when the aircraft carrying them broke apart. Fortunately, the bombs did not detonate. In North Korea, the official rules of the International Basketball Federation are used to play, but they also have alternative rules used in local games. These are attributed to leader Kim Jong-il, who was a big fan of basketball and Michael Jordan. In this version, slam dunks are worth more points. 3-point shots are worth more if they do not touch the rim. Points are deducted for missed attempts, and shots in the final seconds can be worth up to 8 points to create epic comebacks. The deepest, darkest, oldest, and quietest hotel room is located at a depth of 230 feet in a cave that is 65 million years old, in a place called the Grand Canyon Caverns in Arizona. The warehouse scene in the movie Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark is actually just a painting created by artist Michael Pangrazio, which took him 3 months to complete. It was painted on glass, and the scenes were filmed through a hole made in the center. Flight attendants, previously called stewardesses, at American Airlines were prohibited from getting married. This rule lasted until 1968. According to studies, economic hardship causes physical pain. This is because the feeling of lack of control activates psychological processes associated with anxiety, fear, and stress in general, which weakens the immune system and makes people more vulnerable to feeling physical discomfort. There are elevators that use a different technology than common ones. Since they do not use cables, they are held up by magnetic force, which could also allow them to travel horizontally and not only vertically. Just as leap years exist to balance calendars, there are also leap seconds that are added every certain number of years to adjust to the Earth's rotation speed. To replace this, it was proposed to add only 1 hour to the clock every 600 years, but it has not yet been approved. The company Gravity Labs created a pigment made from treated, polluted air, using it to create ink and paint. One of the markers they manufacture contains the equivalent of 30 minutes of carbon emissions from a car. After the fall of the Roman Empire, the Colosseum was slowly dismantled over the years to build other structures, such as palaces, churches, and even the Vatican, in order to save the process of extracting materials from the ground. It was not until the 18th century that it was declared a historical monument and began to be preserved. Former basketball player Shaquille O'Neal has investments in many companies and owns a large number of businesses, including 150 car washes. In an interview, he mentioned that he currently earns more than the annual salary of $30 million that he had when he played in the NBA. Fireworks were invented many centuries ago in China, but the place where they were first used in different colors was Italy in 1830, when people realized they produced different colors depending on the compound they were mixed with, such as calcium, barium, or sodium. In 1993, tests were conducted to see whether it was practical for United States Army soldiers to use skateboards for certain missions, but the topic was never brought up again. The flag of the state of Hawaii, United States, incorporates the flag of the United Kingdom known as the Union Jack, despite never having been under British control. There is no official reason why it was used, but it is believed to have been a gesture of friendship from the King of Hawaii toward British explorers in the 18th century. The silk manufacturing process was considered such a valuable and important secret that China kept it for more than 3,000 years. It was so important that anyone who revealed it was sentenced to the maximum punishment by imperial decree. In Garzón Lagoon, on the southern coast of Uruguay, there is the only circular bridge in the world. It was built to attract more people to the area, but mainly to make drivers slow down when crossing it. A man named Steve Fligg, who was adopted as a baby, spent 4 years searching for his biological mother before finally finding her in 2007. He realized that she worked in the same store as him, and they did not know each other. In most schools in Japan, children do daily cleaning such as sweeping, cleaning floors, taking out the trash, and cleaning windows. It is a tradition that comes from Buddhist practices. For that reason, school janitors only focus on specialized maintenance such as general repairs. Rhinotelexomania is the scientific term for the compulsive disorder of picking one's nose. However, it can also be considered simply a bad habit rather than a disorder. The country where the most bottles are recycled is Finland. 90% of plastic bottles and cans are returned for recycling, and practically 100% of glass containers are recycled as well. Lake Superior, which lies between the borders of Canada and the United States, is the largest freshwater lake in the world. It contains enough volume to cover the entire American continent with water up to 11.8 inches deep. People who have blue or green eyes, the lighter they are, tend to experience more sensitivity to bright light than those with dark eyes. This is because melanin, the pigment that gives color to the iris and the skin, acts as a kind of natural light filter. And lighter eyes have less melanin, causing the need to squint and general discomfort in very bright environments. In 2004, a boa constrictor caused a blackout in Honduras that almost covered the entire country. The boa was electrocuted when it became trapped between two generators and caused a short circuit. Sheep can remember and differentiate the characteristics of up to 50 faces of other sheep, as well as the face of their shepherd. Pet dander is made of cells shed from their fur, skin, or feathers, and some people are allergic. However, humans also produce it. Cats and dogs can also be allergic to human dander. The Colca Canyon in southern Peru reaches a depth of nearly 11,155 feet, more than twice as deep as the Grand Canyon in the United States, which is around 5,249 feet. Thanks to its dimensions, it generates thermal currents so powerful that they allow condors to glide for minutes without moving their wings. The photo of planet Earth called the Blue Marble, taken in 1972, is the last one taken by a human in which the entire planet appears. No one has been that far away again to take a similar photo, only unmanned spacecraft. Bees have hairs on their eyes. They use them to determine wind direction and measure the speed at which they fly. Giant tube sponges can live up to 2,000 years because their cells, unlike almost all other animals, can transform depending on the needs of the sponge. In reality, Santa Claus was not invented by Coca-Cola, despite the popular belief. The first illustrations of St. Nicholas as an overweight, bearded man wearing a red suit were drawn by Thomas Nast in the late 19th century. Starting in 1931, Coca-Cola commissioned its illustrators to draw a friendlier Santa Claus with a more intense red that people associated with the brand's distinctive red. The largest sauna in Norway has a capacity of 150 people. It is a wooden structure on a beach in the Arctic Ocean. In the 1980s, Iraq was developing what would have been the largest artillery weapon in the world, capable of launching satellites into orbit and striking any point on the planet. But the project was canceled due to the First Gulf War. It is not recommended to eat snow, even snow that looks very white and clean. According to a study, snow can attract particles from car exhaust and be harmful. It is better to buy a lemon snow cone. When cats rub their heads against something, they are not only scratching themselves, they are spreading their scent on things to mark their territory. They can do this thanks to glands located on their face, ears, and neck. Stan Lee's tendency to create characters whose names start with the same letter, such as Peter Parker, Bruce Banner, Pepper Potts, and many others, was due to his poor memory for names. Making them this way helped him remember them more easily. In the Yukon region of Canada, there is a forest of signposts. It was started by a soldier recovering from injuries in 1942. He missed his hometown of Illinois so much that he put up a sign from there, and later, tourists continued the tradition. Today, there are more than 72,000. There is a beaver dam in Wood Buffalo National Park in Alberta, Canada, that is so large it can be seen from space. It measures 2,789 feet and is considered the largest in the world. Identical twins are indistinguishable in DNA tests because they share the same genetics. However, they can be distinguished by their fingerprints, which are different. The Netflix series Squid Game was the acting debut for Hoyeon Jung, who plays the character Se Byuk. However, Jung has years of experience in the fashion world and is currently the most followed Korean model on Instagram. According to Guinness World Records, the message in a bottle that took the longest to be discovered floated in the ocean for 108 years and 4 months. It was made by the Marine Biological Association of the United Kingdom in 1906 and was discovered on the coast of Germany in 2015. First-class tickets on the Titanic were extremely expensive, equivalent to $100,000 today. Very few magnates and wealthy families could afford that luxury. This dog named Lou holds the Guinness World Record for the largest ears. They measure 13.4 inches, and its owner has to put ear warmers on it in the winter so they do not get cold. Jellyfish are the most efficient animals at swimming. This is because they consume 48% less oxygen than all other aquatic animals. Chin tattoos on women have very important cultural significance in Maori culture. They are called moko kawai, and recently Orini Kaipara became the first primetime news presenter in New Zealand to wear one of these tattoos. According to research from the University of Montreal, anyone has the potential to become a good singer. It is a skill that can be learned and improved with practice. In South Africa, there is a giraffe sanctuary called Giraffe Manor, where there is also a hotel in which guests can see giraffes up close and feed them directly from their first-floor window. New Age singer and songwriter Enya lives in an Irish castle that she bought in the 1990s. It has 6 renovated bedrooms and modern adaptations, such as security cameras. Actor Clint Eastwood was the mayor of the small city of Carmel in California, United States, from 1986 to 1988. His salary was only $200 per month. NASA has a service where you can register your phone number and receive an alert every time the International Space Station passes over your location. A Boeing 767 airplane can absorb so much air with its turbines that it could fill the equivalent of a blimp, like the one popularized by the Goodyear tire brand, in just 7 seconds. The vision of hawks is 8 times more precise than that of humans. They have 1 million photoreceptors in their retinas, compared to the 200,000 that humans have. There is a frog that defends itself by headbutting, except its head has spines that secrete venom. The most expensive parking space of all was sold in Hong Kong in a luxury building. It cost $1.3 million. There are more people with Scottish ancestry living in the United States and Canada than in Scotland itself. The first antidotes against venom from animals such as snakes were obtained by milking venom from those same species and injecting it into sheep, from which antibodies were later extracted. The first television remote controls that came out in the 1940s were connected with a 20-foot-long cable. 53% of the inhabitants of the island of Fiji do not have access to safe drinking water, despite the presence of the Fiji water brand in the region. Musician Beck released an album available only in written music form in 2012, in a 100-page book with sheet music so other artists could perform it. Actress Emma Watson was originally going to use fake tooth prosthetics to portray Hermione in the Harry Potter films, similar to how the character is described in the books. But it was discarded after filming one scene because it prevented her from speaking properly. 80% of all dialogue in the movie Ghostbusters consisted of improvisation done at the moment the scenes were filmed. The script only indicated the structure and locations. Pigs have the ability to be manipulative to obtain food. According to studies, they are intelligent enough to remember weaknesses and use them to their advantage. The video game publisher Firebird released a compilation in 1985 of the worst video games submitted to them. They titled it, "Do Not Buy This, the 5 Worst Video Games Ever Made." Sweden and Finland are the only countries that have won at least 1 medal in every Olympic Games held since 1908. Adult rats can fit through very small holes, as small as 1.2 inches in diameter. That is why they can infest homes that people believe are rodent-proof. Humans have existed for approximately 200,000 years. However, the oldest written or illustrated history known is only 6,000 years old. This means we do not have a concise way of knowing what happened during 97% of our history. Baby carrots are not actually a different variety. They are simply carrots considered too ugly to be sold in the supermarket, that are cut in a specific way so they look good. They were invented by a farmer named Mike Eurosek in 1986. The first time a toilet flush was shown on a television series during family viewing hours was in 1971, in an episode of the series All in the Family. Before that, it was considered in poor taste to even show a bathroom. In the following decade, toilet humor would become popular. The village of Mawsynram in India is the rainiest place on the planet. On average, 467 inches of rain fall each year. In 2007, actor Nicolas Cage outbid Leonardo DiCaprio at an auction for a real dinosaur skull, with an offer of $276,000. But in 2015, the government of Mongolia demanded that it be returned, since it had been sold without permission, so he had to give it back. Most LEGO sets include extra duplicate pieces that are intentionally chosen because statistically, they're the ones most frequently lost. In 2011, a prison in Brazil began using geese as part of its security. These animals have a very good ability to detect unusual movements at night. Bug-killing machines can release dust containing microscopic insect parts more than 6 feet and 7 inches away, contaminating everything nearby with bacteria and viruses from these animals. If you could scream or make a sound louder than 1,100 decibels, a black hole would be created that would destroy the entire galaxy. For comparison, a rock concert averages around 100 decibels. Some of the sound effects used in Tony Stark's armor in the movie Iron Man were taken from video games from the 8-bit era, such as the Space Invaders cannon sound that is used when Jarvis locks onto a target. Highway 1 in Australia is the longest continuous highway in the world, at 9,010 miles. It connects all the state capitals of the country. One statistic indicates that around 1,730 injuries caused by vending machines occur each year in the United States alone. It almost always happens to people who try to move the machine to make the products come out, and it falls on them. In ancient Greece, during the month before the Olympic Games, wars were not allowed. They had to be temporarily stopped so athletes and spectators could travel safely from different parts of the empire. There is a dog breed called Basenji that does not have the ability to bark. Instead, it produces a sound similar to a howl. It is believed that it was intentionally bred this way by humans, using selective breeding methods thousands of years ago. The movie Black Widow caused a 163% increase in searches for red hair dye. Sales also increased during a short period of time. Brazil did not have enough money to send its athletes to the 1932 Los Angeles Olympic Games, so they sent them on a ship with a massive shipment of coffee to sell at every port they visited. The theme of Alexander the Great in the game Civilization V is the oldest complete musical composition in the world that includes notation. The Juno space probe traveled a total of 1.86 billion miles to reach the planet Jupiter. It launched in 2011 and arrived in 2016. Ants cannot be injured from falling from any height. They can even fall from an airplane and nothing will happen to them. This is due to their exoskeleton, but mainly because of their very low mass. The birds capable of diving the deepest are emperor penguins. They can descend more than 1,640 feet into the ocean and remain there for 20 minutes. Wrestler Andre the Giant always wanted to attend a Broadway play, but he never went because he was concerned about blocking the view of people sitting behind him. In that case, he would have had to sit in the last row. Motion sickness occurs when there is a mismatch between perceived motion and actual motion. The brain concludes that one of the senses is hallucinating due to consuming something toxic, and then sends a signal to expel the contents of the stomach. The orca Keiko, which appeared in the movie Free Willy, was released into the wild in July 2002 in Iceland after having been in captivity for more than 23 years. A few weeks later, it appeared on the coast of Norway seeking contact with humans, since it could not adapt to life with other orcas. The nostrils divide the work by taking turns inhaling the greatest amount of air and automatically switching every 3 or 4 hours. This is called the nasal cycle, and it is why sometimes one side feels more congested than the other. During the worldwide Live Aid concert in 1985, musician Phil Collins performed on stage in England, then boarded a Concorde airplane and crossed the ocean in less than 4 hours to perform that same night in the United States, becoming the first artist to accomplish that feat. Sea otters have folds in their skin that function as pockets. They use them to store their favorite rocks, which they use to open oysters and other mollusks. A study conducted in 2008 concluded that scent can directly influence our dreams. Researchers filled a room where participants slept with the scent of roses, and they reported positive dreams. In contrast, those exposed to the smell of rotten eggs while sleeping reported unpleasant dreams. The most common state of matter in the universe is plasma. Although it is rare on planet Earth, the sun, the stars, and almost all interstellar matter exist in this state. At the beginning of the 19th century, Napoleon ordered that a communication method be invented that did not require light or sound. When it was created, it was called night writing and was used for military tactical codes. Later, it became the basis of Braille writing. The rarest wild cat in the world is the Borneo cat. Only 12 have been captured for study between 1874 and 2002. That is approximately 1 every 10 years. Egypt was not independent or ruled by native Egyptians for more than 2,500 years. This ended in 1956 when it gained independence from Great Britain. Steve Jobs once gave a Jaguar car to his assistant after she told him one day that she had arrived late because her car would not start. There are 7.8 times more atoms in 1 tablespoon of 0.169 fluid ounces of water than the number of tablespoons of water into which the entire Atlantic Ocean can be divided. People who are new drivers in Japan must place a special symbol on their cars for 1 year, called the Shoshincha mark, which is green and yellow. There is also the Koreisha symbol that must be placed by elderly drivers. Helicopters are designed so that if the engine shuts down, they can still be controlled and landed safely instead of simply falling. This system is called auto-rotation. The Princess of the Netherlands, Catharina Amalia, Princess of Orange, has attended public schools throughout her academic life in the region. It is optional for her classmates to call her Your Royal Highness out of courtesy. India is one of the nations with the lowest meat consumption in the world. According to the country's own data, 31% of its population are vegetarians. When the remake of the movie It was released in 2017, the clown industry suffered a major economic blow. Thousands of shows scheduled in schools and children's parties were canceled, and the number of new performances decreased. In the city of Istanbul, Turkey, there is a machine that gives water and food to stray dogs in exchange for recyclable bottles. The city with the most millionaires in the world is London, while the city with the most billionaires, meaning those with more than $1 billion in wealth, is Beijing, which has just surpassed New York. The voice actor of Fred in the original 1969 series Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?, Frank Welker, still provides his voice in newer adaptations of the cartoon. He also now voices Scooby. In 2009, the manager of an Italian bank secretly borrowed money from large accounts to help people with little money who could not access credit due to the economic crisis, without realizing that it was precisely for that reason that the crisis had occurred. This continued until 2016, when he was discovered and brought to trial. In sound editing for horror movies, there is almost always infrasound that exists outside the range we can hear but can still be felt, often causing anxiety and even chills in some people. Until the late 1960s, men with long hair were not allowed to enter Disneyland due to the strict dress code. In Poland, there is a forest called the Crooked Forest, where there are more than 400 pine trees with curved shapes pointing north. It is believed that they were modified with tools in the early years after being planted in the 1930s, especially to produce curved wood for furniture, but the exact reason is still unknown. There is a golf course with a single hole near the demilitarized zone between South Korea and North Korea that is surrounded at its boundaries by minefields that can explode with any sudden movement. It is considered the most dangerous golf course in the world. Two of the largest rivers in the world, the Amazon River and the Negro River, cross into a single body of water. However, they do not mix because they have different density, temperature, and speed, and each continues on its own path. There is a race called the 24 Hours of Lemons. It is like a parody of the original race, except this one uses used cars costing no more than $500. In 2016, professional skydiver Luke Akins became the first person to jump from an airplane without a parachute and land safely in a special net measuring only 97 square feet. When he jumped, he was at an altitude of 25,000 feet. The most visited city in the world, whether for business or tourism, is Hong Kong, with nearly 30 million visitors per year. In second place is Bangkok, and then London. Paper can only be recycled a total of 6 times. After that, the fibers become weak, and it can no longer maintain its form. Carbonated drinks have more bubbles when they come in cans than when they are in plastic bottles. This is because carbon dioxide cannot escape from a sealed aluminum can, unlike plastic bottles. That is why most people say those drinks taste better in cans or even glass than in plastic. According to Netflix statistics, the movie most difficult to recommend based on your tastes and viewing history is the 2004 comedy Napoleon Dynamite. Germany finished paying its World War I debt in 2010, 91 years after signing the Treaty of Versailles that ended the conflict, and in which the country admitted it had been entirely its fault. Only female mosquitoes bite animals and humans. Males feed only on flower nectar. There is a site called Africam, where you can watch live cameras 24 hours a day transmitting from protected areas in southern Africa. You can see elephants, zebras, giraffes, hyenas, and all kinds of wildlife in their natural habitat. In the movie Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, there is a villain called Razor Fist, who has appeared in different Marvel comics, working for more important villains. In the movie, he has one blade arm. However, in the comics, both of his arms are like that. In 2007, pirates stole an underwater internet cable near Vietnam, which caused the entire country to have very slow internet speeds for many days. The surface water of the Atlantic Ocean is significantly saltier than that of the Pacific Ocean. This is due to ocean currents and mountain formations that retain fresher Pacific water and prevent its movement. In California, there is a law that prevents self-driving vehicles from exceeding 60 miles per hour when operating in autonomous mode. Some companies like Google can allow cars to go faster during testing, but they must limit them. When dinosaurs inhabited Earth, there were still active volcanoes on the moon, and it is believed that some eruptions could be seen with the naked eye from our planet. This was more than 50 million years ago. If you could drive your car straight upward, you would reach space in less than 1 hour if you drove at 62 miles per hour. It is not as far as it seems. Vanguard 1 is the oldest satellite still orbiting Earth. It was launched on March 17, 1958. It has a diameter of 6.3 inches and weighs less than 3.3 pounds. Because of this, it was nicknamed the Grapefruit Satellite. Until before World War II, tea was still used as currency in the Siberia region, in the same way it had been used in much of the world centuries earlier. Until before 2000, GPS technology had something called selective availability, which consisted of intentional errors so it would not be precise enough to be used in military operations. But they had to disable it because it affected commercial aircraft. 10% of the Russian government's revenue comes from the sale of vodka. Absolute monarchy is a form of government in which only one monarch has absolute power. Currently, only 6 countries remain with absolute monarchy: Eswatini, Brunei, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, and Vatican City. The whistles that came as prizes in Captain Crunch cereal in the 1970s were one of the first tools used to hack telephones. By using specific sound frequencies, they could make long-distance calls. In the city of Songdo, South Korea, garbage trucks do not exist. Instead, they have a collection system where trash enters from each home or building directly into underground pipes that lead to waste processing centers. In 2013, 2 men in Florida were unable to steal a Corvette because it had a manual transmission, not automatic. They even forced the owner to tell them how to drive it, and he told them to press the clutch. But after trying, they gave up and only took his watch. Rappers Jay-Z, Notorious B.I.G., DMX, and Busta Rhymes attended the same vocational school in Brooklyn, New York, at the same time before becoming famous. Bakken in Denmark is the oldest amusement park in the world that is still in operation, as it was founded in 1583. Goats are immune to poison ivy and are commonly used to control these toxic plants. Additionally, the toxins are not reflected in their milk. The imperial titles Tsar in Russia and Kaiser in Germany originate from Latin centuries ago in honor of the title Caesar used by Roman emperors, which itself originated from the family name of Julius Caesar. The song Manic Monday by the group The Bangles was actually written by Prince, who, after following their work for several days, gave them a cassette with a demo of the song for them to record, and it became a hit. Amazon Web Services offers physical data transport. If you need to move large amounts of information, they bring you a truck with 100 petabytes of hard drives where the data is copied and transported to its new destination without needing an internet connection. Sending 100 petabytes of information would take years over a high-speed internet connection. Singer Michael Bublé was once kicked off the set of the series The X-Files because he took a hot dog from the food area. He was working as an extra in a scene. This happened before he became famous as a musician and singer. A study conducted in 2013 stated that the 14 billion public websites that existed at that time were connected by only 19 clicks or fewer. That means from one website, you can reach any other with just a few link clicks. Between Africa and Antarctica, there is an uninhabited and frozen island called Bouvet Island that belongs to Norway since it was discovered. The test tubes used to collect samples for the Perseverance rover were named the cleanest objects ever built on Earth. They have already been used on Mars to collect soil samples. According to DNA tests that have been conducted, 1 out of every 3 fish sold in supermarkets and served in restaurants is mislabeled and is a different species than indicated. M&Ms were created specifically so soldiers could enjoy chocolate that was heat-resistant and easy to transport during World War II. Queen termites can live up to 50 years, longer than any other type of termite, and can produce eggs for more than 10 years. People tend to walk more slowly and have different step patterns when they are in an environment they do not fully understand, such as when city signs are confusing. This is according to research published in September 2021. The largest empire that ever existed was the British Empire, which at its peak in 1920 encompassed nearly 1/4 of the world's population. The small plastic object placed in the center of pizzas to prevent them from being crushed by the box is called a pizza saver and was invented in 1974. In 2020, Pizza Hut partnered with IKEA to launch a full-size table inspired by a pizza saver. There is a travel agency in Japan called Unagi Travel that specializes in taking your stuffed animals on vacation trips around the world. Reservations must be made in advance because spots fill up quickly. According to a study conducted through surveys in 2021, the most corrupt country in the world and the one with the least transparency is Iraq. The least corrupt are Germany, Canada, and Denmark. The cereal Cookie Crisp was invented in 1977 by the company Purina, the same company that makes dog food. You can be denied entry to any Disney theme park if you have a visible tattoo considered offensive or inappropriate. The Pentagon allocates around $250,000 per year in budget just to study the body language of world leaders such as Vladimir Putin. It snowed in Cuba once. It happened on March 12, 1857, in the municipality of Cardenas, and it is the only time it has snowed on that island. Only the countries of Fiji, Vanuatu, and Tuvalu have never had snow in their recorded history. A concert piano must withstand 30 tons of pressure exerted directly by the tension strings of the keys. The characteristic British accent began developing among the upper class in London in the mid-18th century. Before that, most people in the United Kingdom spoke in a way similar to modern American English. $1 bills have remained the same since 1929, unlike all other bills that have updated security measures. This is because they believe no one would take the time and effort to counterfeit $1 bills. Similar to all languages in the world, sign language has different accents or variations depending on the region, country, age, and ethnicity of the people who use it. The president of Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, selected Joe and Anthony Russo to direct the movie Captain America and the Winter Soldier after seeing the Paintball War episodes of the series Community, directed by the brothers, episodes that are like a tribute to action films. In the original novel Dracula by Bram Stoker from 1897, Dracula cannot be defeated only by sunlight. The light merely weakens him. The pyramids of Egypt were so smooth and reflective that they looked like glass. This was about 4,000 years ago. Hundreds of artisans polished them to perfection. In 1997, a supercomputer playing a chess match against professional chess player Garry Kasparov made an unusual move, which confused Kasparov and led him to lose the game. It was later discovered that the computer had made an error, or that it was simply a random move. The movie Life of Brian by the comedy group Monty Python was produced entirely with money from George Harrison, member of the Beatles, after the production company refused funding due to the sensitive religious subject it addressed. Ostrich feathers are so effective at removing dust that the car company BMW uses a giant wheel with feathers from this bird to remove dust from cars before painting them. The population growth rate is slowly decreasing, and the world population could begin to decline starting in 2100, according to data from the United Nations. The seal of Tutankhamun's tomb remained intact and unbroken for 3,245 years, until it was opened in 1942 when it was looted. Stunt motorcyclist Evel Knievel fractured 433 bones during his career. He currently holds the record for the person who broke the most bones in his lifetime. Singer Selena liked collecting jewel-encrusted eggs called Fabergé eggs. She owned around 500, and they are now displayed in a museum dedicated to her. The first phone with a touchscreen was released in 1994. It was manufactured by IBM, and, in addition to the touchscreen, it could send emails and had calendar and organizer functions. It is considered by many to be the first smartphone. The movie The Wizard of Oz from 1939, starring Judy Garland, was not the first film based on the book by Frank L. Baum. By that time, there were already around 10 adaptations, including 2 made before 1910. The forces of the United Nations are called blue helmets because of the uniform they wear. The bright blue color also helps snipers distinguish them and avoid harming them. The loudest sound that an animal can produce is that of the blue whale, which reaches up to 188 decibels and can be detected more than 497 miles away. In the past 25 years, more than 90% of the total monarch butterfly population has disappeared, and it is expected to soon enter the threatened species category on the lists of the International Union for Conservation of Nature. The ice cream shown on television or in photographs is almost always made of mashed potatoes and painted corn syrup. This is done because under hot lighting, it would melt too quickly if it were real ice cream, and they would not have time to photograph it. To know what things are edible and not poisonous, rats often smell the breath of other rats. That is how they choose their food. He-Man was created as a toy before he had his animated television show. When proposing the toys, the sales representative told Mattel executives that they were working on the cartoon. However, nothing had actually been created yet. By analyzing high-resolution satellite images with algorithms trained through trial and error, researcher Sarah Parcak and her team discovered 17 pyramids, 1,000 tombs, and more than 3,000 archaeological sites in Egypt. Sprinter Usain Bolt received offers to play in the NFL as a wide receiver, but he rejected them because players in that sport suffer too many hits that could put his health at risk. According to estimates of all internet traffic, only 48% comes from humans. That means the other 52% comes from programs, also called bots. In ancient Egypt, when someone wanted to bring a book from another region of the world, it was immediately taken to the Library of Alexandria to be copied. The original stayed in the library, while the copy was returned to the owner. According to a study, tea tastes better with unfiltered water because mineral impurities, such as calcium carbonate, enhance the flavor. However, it is not recommended. In the 1880s, New York had a severe horse problem because more than 40 dead horses accumulated in the streets every day. They were the main means of transportation, but they were not easy to fix like cars.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.